Sandra Harris, and today I have a special guest, my husband, Israel Harris, and we're going to talk about a really cool experience we recently had where we had a 2 day event. One day was with correctional officers, and the second day was with 65 incarcerated people, correctional officers, and outside people like us. So before we get into that, I just wanted to say that it's been about 7 months since my last YouTube video. And one of the reasons is because I was working on my fourth book, which is my first nonfiction title. It's In the Shadow of Freedom, The Enduring Call for Racial Justice. And it does talk about the history of slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, lynching, and its modern manifestation today as mass incarceration, over policing, and incarceration. So a lot of what I wrote about tied into the experience we just had. And I do feel like it was an opportunity that God put in my life for me to have a personal experience to complement everything I have written about. And I'm really excited that the book's going to be coming out next month through Orbis Books, and hopefully you all will get it and enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing. So we're going to talk about this 2 day experience we had, and I will turn it over to you. So tell us a little bit about how we ended up getting here.
We partnered with the company I work for, Master Electronics. They found a company named of Hustle 2.0 that has done extensive work with people who are incarcerated. So they had a 2 day event that was, first day was with the officers, in which we spent time with them and then we replicated it with the people who are incarcerated for day 2.
Okay, and we both had a little bit of nerves going into this. Why don't you talk about your nerves going into it, and then I'll talk about mine.
So initially, I think my nerves or apprehension was regarding the interaction with the people who are incarcerated. But as I thought about it more, I then kind of it swayed much more towards the officers. I feel as though that's just through my own experience, and also just through own experience with police officers, but then also with the lack of interaction with prison officers. And I felt that actually I was more nervous about that. And with that first day event being 182 officers, it was a bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. I would say that I was also nervous about the correctional officers. Again, when I think of law enforcement, I think there are like negative connotations, especially about the interactions with African Americans in this country. But I would say that the event really changed my mind and heart about people who are correctional officers. The group, I believe there was about 400 people who applied for the day. And like you said, there was about 182 who were there. And it was a very diverse group of people. I'm not sure how representative that is of the overall Arizona Department of Corrections, but the people we came in contact with were very diverse. There was African Americans, white people, Latino people, and there was people of all different ages. There were a lot more younger people than I thought there would be, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm sure some people in their 50s. And overall, they were just people. And a lot of them had people in their family who were incarcerated, a parent or a sibling, and that kind of motivated them to get into the law. And a lot of people genuinely wanted to help the people who are incarcerated to have a better life when they got out.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when we sat down. Each of us sat with 3 officers to discuss their life. They all created a poster, and we did as well, which just discussed everything that they've gone through to that point.
Their life map.
Yeah, their life map, and it was very interesting to see that many of them had tough upbringings, and then also their professional life had a lot of diverse experiences. Some in the military, some who tried to be police officers but didn't make the force, and then others who left and retired but then decided they wanted to work again and then became correctional officers. It's a very emotional time, as they don't normally have that time, especially when they're working, to be able to express any emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that was interesting to see.
Yeah.
What else did you see?
And we were brought in as like business leaders. It was kind of a category they called like CEOs, business leaders. And so we were also going to be listening to their business pitches. And I was really inspired by the person. There was two people that I was paired with. One of them was an African American male, and what his goals for his profession were to increase the number of people who were incarcerated who finished their schooling, whether that was GED, high school diploma, or college programs, or programs in the prison. And the other goal was how to get people who are in the programs to class on time. And I told him after that he inspired me because a lot of times you don't think about the people who are working on the inside really having that much care and concern for the people who are incarcerated. Like a lot of times you hear the horror stories about people who are being abused or being beaten or being raped, or just you hear horror stories. But the people we met were really just like humans, like us, who had a job and wanted to do their job well and wanted to really have a connection and like have a positive influence on the people that they worked with.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that some were there. They took pride in the fact that they had no physical altercations uh, with those that they had to supervise. Others were there to make a change from their ways of the past, and their inability to show emotion. They wanted to be able to form a connection with other people. Very interesting to see as well that there was the forced overtime. So they if they had a desk job within the prison, after that 40 hours they had to work another 32 in another department, whether it was in the kitchen or out supervising those who are imprisoned during their rec time out in the field or yard area. They have to be out there, and they could be one person could be supervising 1 to 200 people at a time.
Wow.
And the amount of stress that goes with that, and the amount of time they can move around to different prisons within their career. And I felt for them that when you have to work 72 hours a week. And do you remember that the one person who spoke, who said that he worked for 72 hours straight, and he was a bit delirious towards the end and made some bad decisions, and they felt really bad about it.
So let's talk about what I think everyone is interested in, and that's when we actually went to the prison event.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Globe, Arizona. That was on Friday. And there, like I said before, there was 65 men who were incarcerated. They bussed in the different men. So they weren't all from the Globe location, but there was other people who came in from other prisons in Arizona. And there was a number of correctional officers, probably like a third of how many were at the event on Thursday. And then there was people like us, this business leaders, CEOs, and volunteers who were interested in coming. Mm-hmm. And I will say that I was a little bit nervous because, what society says about people who are incarcerated is that they're dangerous. So I was a little bit concerned for kind of wondering, could something bad happen when I was there? But at the same time, I was like, the reason why I really want to do this is because I feel like that's a misconception. And I feel like it's something that I personally need to overcome. That what I would say is kind of like an irrational fear. So when we first went there, the correctional officers who were standing outside put their hands in like a tunnel, put your hands up. like a tunnel like this, and we ran through. And then when we got inside the facility where the incarcerated people were, they also put their hands up in a tunnel. So we ran through the tunnel. Music was playing. We ran underneath the hands, and all the people, the men, were cheering for us, and we were high-fiving them. And I was a little bit scared just because I had never been in a room full of men with orange jumpsuits. And, in movies, when you see that, something bad happens. But after just kind of having that experience, that initial experience of going through, high-fiving, all of them looking really excited to have us there, smiling, and then we went around and introduced ourselves, I just completely relaxed. And I just felt like a lot of my preconceived notions or worries kind of melted away.
Yeah, it's interesting. Three things on that note. We first arrived and we put away our phones and other devices.
We couldn't bring them.
Yeah, we couldn't bring them in. Everyone seemed to be, some were nervous, but others were relaxed, and there wasn't a lot. It wasn't the same stress as the day before, maybe because there weren't as many officers. Really, for me. Second was after speaking with some people before going there, they mentioned that how big of a privilege this was for those individuals to be a part of the program. And the negative ramifications if they did anything wrong, that things that could happen to them in prison if they did something out of turn. So I was like, okay, so they know better. And third was, I don't know, when I got there, something changed in me, and I felt a little bit of nervousness, but I thought to myself, it's not nearly as bad as the day before, and I got through that, and it felt like a road game for a sporting event. When I saw everything there, I was like, all right, I got to run through this tunnel like I own the place. So for me, I was pumped up. I was like, I have to own this room. So as soon as I walked in, I saw everyone, and they seemed just as nervous as we could have been. More nervous, actually. So it made me feel good to see that they were nervous. I just went with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got into small groups where it was 2 correctional officers, one of us, like business leaders, and then one of the incarcerated people. And like you said, they went through, I'm not sure exactly how many weeks, but it was like multiple weeks where they were doing the program for the Hustle 2.0.
It was like 2 weeks to a month, depending on when they got the information.
Okay.
Some only did 2 weeks, but others practiced like 20 times before they got there.
And I think there's like the booklet that they go through is like 1,500 pages.
Yeah.
So it's a lot about like personal development and like taking accountability and like just being ready, having a mindset for when you're gonna get out and re-enter. So I ended up partnering with 2 women who worked in corrections. One of them was a librarian, and the other one actually was a correctional officer. She had her uniform on. And this white man who was in his early 50s. And, when you think about like stereotypical images, he did have like a neck tattoo and like tattoo on the back of his head. He had a buzz cut, tattoos on his sleeve, tattoo sleeves on both arms, tattoos on his hands. And we sat in a little group of the 4 of us, and the first question that the organizer asked was what we were going to give, what we came to give for the event. And I had said that I wanted to just give a human connection because I know that a lot of people who are incarcerated don't have a lot of interaction with people who are on the outside, and that I just kind of wanted to be there and connect with people. And when I said that, he started tearing up and was like cried a little bit because he said he had been there for like 12 or 13 years and had never once had a visitor. So he said it really meant a lot to him that we were there and that we were his visitors for that day.
That's interesting. I think I remember that person. He was very like talkative and open. He was very happy. I think a lot of people settled down because we had 2 sessions before we sat down of networking where we had to go around and shake hands or hug, depending, for man or woman, with 24 people. So I think it kind of disarmed people more and got them more into like hey, we're all together in this and we're all the same. The group that I was with, it was 2 people who are incarcerated and 1 correctional officer who had a lot of experience. I think he was like a higher level than your typical officer. I think he's probably like a level 3 officer, and he was more focused on the education side and making sure that he wanted to inform them of, he said a few times that he was a few bad decisions he could have made away from being in prison instead of being a correctional officer. So he really understood how important it was. He had a chance to speak with them. We had one gentleman in our group. He was in his mid-50s, I believe, or maybe a little older, and he was getting out of jail in 30 days.
Oh.
So he was very excited. So he was actually practicing interviews and things of that nature, and wanted to talk about his life plan for things he actually was going to do soon. Whereas the other one had a year, but he was very well prepared and and was a leader within the prison.
And in the graduate class that I was taking for a certificate towards restorative justice and chaplaincy, we talked a lot about restorative justice, and one of the one type of restorative justice is victim offender dialogues, where people who were the victim of a crime or offense will actually go into prison and share their experience and the impact that the crime had on them and their families. And one of the men who was incarcerated, on his life map, because they also had a life map like the correctional officers, he talked about when a program had come in that was a victim offender program. And he said when he sat across from the people who had been victims of crimes and learned about like the ripple effect of the crime on their life, that it completely changed him and transformed him. And that for the first time, he actually understood the impact of the things that he had done, and that it made him want to change his life. So I thought that was really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really good. I was with one person. He had, I think, 6 kids, and many of them were older at this point. I think they were close to being adults, if not already adults. And he talked a lot about being able to be present for them, and that's what he really wanted to be able to do, and have a career that would allow him to spend time with his kids as well and figure that portion out. He actually had obtained his, I think you met him, he had obtained his degree.
Associates and bachelors.
Yeah, associates and bachelors. And he was a leader of multiple programs within the prison. And he talked a lot about just the hobbies and things that he's done in there to better himself, to stay away from negative aspects of being in prison, which is a lot of just, negative dialogue and a lot of fighting and things of that nature. What did you think of that person who was a mentor that was a former that was a former prisoner at Guantanamo Bay?
Oh, I thought that was really inspiring. Wasn't it Pelican Bay?
Was it Pelican Bay?
Yeah, I think it was Pelican Bay.
That was Pelican Bay, okay.
Yeah, there was someone who had served over 30 years. And because I believe that the organizer of Hustle 2.0 had originally started a different organization called Defy that did very similar things. And that he said when he was in the program that it had changed his life. So I think that programs like this are so important because they can really change people's outlook on life and give them more hope and more like something to look forward to in the future. So we did listen, like you said, they gave us a 3-minute job interview pitch. And one thing I wanted, and then they gave us a business pitch.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really like brilliant things about this type of program, bringing in like CEOs and business leaders and having us interact with the people who are incarcerated, is that I hope it would transform the hearts and minds of the business leaders to be open to employing people who are incarcerated who are incarcerated when they get out, or people who are formerly incarcerated, giving them a chance. Because I know that there's so many laws and regulations, and that for a lot of people who are incarcerated when they get out, they really don't have opportunities. And I know this is changing in some states and somewhat on the federal government level, but during the prison boom, when more and more people were getting incarcerated every year, the government really cracked down and said if you have a drug conviction, banned from you're banned from public housing, you're banned from receiving food stamps or government aid. You were pretty much unemployable in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
And also one of the things was that you could no longer get a Pell Grant. So you couldn't have that money to go to school while you were incarcerated. And I know that recently for the Pell Grant was changed, and that like I said, in some states they're trying to roll back some of the harsher penalties. But I think bringing in people who are hiring to meet people first on a face-to-face basis might change the business culture and make it more likely that people will hire someone who's formerly incarcerated, which I think is really needed.
What did you think of some of the interviews that you heard?
I was amazed by the people, and I felt like I just wish that I wish and I hope and I pray that when they get out that they really have a chance, because if you get out, unless you can really get a well-paying job and pay rent and buy groceries, it's hard to live. Mm-hmm. So I really hope that the culture changes, so that people who are formerly incarcerated who've done their time, that they can do their time and move on. Yeah. It's not like they're second-class citizens for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk a little bit about the step to the line exercise we did?
Yeah, that actually, I really enjoyed that. We did that actually both days. Mm-hmm. So what did you have, regarding the step to the line portion, I thought that was really good, that they had a series, two really long lines, so on both sides of the facility that we were in, and we'd have one incarcerated person and 1 to 2 coaches or officers with each person standing at a line, and then there a series of questions were asked, and we would either, if it was a yes to a question, to say like you grew up, you were raised in a household with both parents, if that was a yes, you would both stay at the line. If the answer was no, you would step away from the line. And there was a series of very personal questions from do you have you at any point thought, had held a grudge against someone that you'd like to let go of? After this experience, would you like to let go of that grudge? Did you grow up in a household with drugs and alcohol? Have you been in prison? Have you been arrested before? Have you been in prison for a certain number of years? And that was astounding to hear the number of years that people have been in prison. And then also when they talked about the age in which you first were arrested. Mm-hmm. And they just kept going down in terms of age. Were you 20 years old, 18, 16, 15? They went all the way down to age 6.
4.
Was it 4?
4. Okay,
that's even worse. I had 6 in my head. I don't know why 6 seemed a lot better. That's terrible. What else happened on that?
Well, I think that exercise really brought people closer, because you realize that you're not as different as you think. Mm-hmm. And there was questions like, did you grow up in poverty? Did one of your parents, were one of your parents incarcerated? Did you lose one or both of your parents? And what you saw for the people who were incarcerated, that a lot of them had very hard upbringings, where they did grow up in poverty, where they heard gunshots in their neighborhood where they grew up, where a parent was incarcerated, where they might have dropped out of high school. So I think that just kind of builds your empathy, mm-hmm. because a lot of times in our society, there's this image that if you're incarcerated, that you're a bad person, mm-hmm. or that you just, you're a violent person, or you don't care about yourself, you don't care about other people. But for me, it's kind of like we all are given a circumstance that we grow up in, and that if it's a really hard circumstance, then how many choices do we really have? Mm-hmm. And like you said, there was people, the correctional officers and the people who were incarcerated were very close in a lot of the questions. It mm-hmm. seemed like a lot of the correctional officers also grew up in really hard conditions. And for a lot of people, they could have been on the other side, given, you know.
Yeah, that's what made I was more surprised at the number of things you had in common,
Mm-hmm.
and then also the amount of emotion
Mm-hmm.
and the number of hugs that we, I think, both needed. And then you would see some people who really had no choice in the matter. You know, one person, I just remember I spoke with, and when they asked a series of questions, I looked at him
Mm-hmm.
because I remembered some of the stuff he told me
Yeah.
when he was told me that he just wanted to go to college
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to play baseball,
Mm-hmm.
but his dad forced him into a life of gang banging and he had to kill someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw him over there and he was just like, I could tell he felt like I could be on the other side. Another, you know, I could have had just a normal life
Yeah.
if I wasn't forced into this.
Yeah.
I thought that was like I said, life altering experience. Then also the person who was right across from us to our right, who had not had a visitor in like 20 years. The one gentleman, I believe, is close to 25 years. So
And
that's a lot.
so they had asked ahead of time, like, because like you said, we were just in a long line stretching the whole facility
Mm-hmm.
of people who were not incarcerated on one side and the people who were incarcerated facing us on the other side. And there was two separate groups of us doing this. And they had, the organizer at the beginning had said, like, you can ask the person across from you if they're okay with hugging. And like you said, women could not hug the incarcerated men, but we could give a handshake.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who was across from us said to you, because you said to them, are you okay with a hug? And he said, yes, I'm a hugger. And like you went across and gave him a hug. But also, when the question was asked, have you had any visitors? He said he hadn't had any visitors.
Yeah, that
And
hurt. Yeah.
I was just thinking I was thinking to myself, so this guy's a hugger, but how many hugs has he got in the
0.
years that he's been in here?
Yeah.
You know? And like you were able to give the guys hugs, and like one guy was just like had the tears coming down and said
He kept
later,
apologizing. Yeah.
yeah, said, because I think that a lot of people on both sides we don't really think about these type of questions. And especially when you've had more of a traumatic childhood, a lot of times you push that aside and don't really want to come to terms with it or think about it. So this was really like giving us the opportunity to kind of sit in like the reality of our lives. And I think that was, for some people, especially the people who were incarcerated, they hadn't really had a chance to do that. And it was kind of painful.
It was painful because he said to me afterwards, he said, man, he's like, my daughter's 9 years old and her mom makes it difficult to talk to her. And when I want to, now she doesn't want to talk to me at all. I can't even talk to her. Mm-hmm. And if he's a hugger and he can't talk or hug or do anything, he can't visit his daughter at all. Yeah. That hurt a lot. And then the other gentleman who was crying and he kept apologizing, he just said, you know, he cannot remember the last time that he had cried. Yeah. And because he had been in prison for so long. Yeah. And I just, that struggle, and then again, that person I talked to before who's, you know, he's getting out in a year, but he's been processing a lot. Mm-hmm. And it was just, you could tell everyone in the prison like really looked up to him. Mm-hmm. And his emotions kind of came out. And then you want to talk about what happened afterwards when people started going on stage?
Well, I wanted to say one other thing about it. Huh? One of the questions was, look at the person across from you, and did you have any like stereotypes that came to mind when you saw them?
Oh, yeah.
And
what'd you say?
The person who was across from us said, I didn't have any stereotypes about you guys, but I was worried what you would think about us. And like, if you would think that we like are a certain type of person because we're incarcerated. And I think that impacted me, because I think that like having like self-esteem and like self-confidence is really important for anyone. Mm-hmm. But I think that the weight of having the negative stereotypes of being incarcerated while you're there, and just the weight of being like known because of the worst thing you've done, is just a really heavy weight to carry. And I think I basically said, like, yeah, I was a little bit nervous, but I'm so glad I'm here. You guys are all cool. It's a great experience. So I hope I kind of gave back, like, you are worthy. You are a human. I'm glad I'm here. Like, I see you for who you are. I don't see you as someone wearing an orange jumpsuit.
Well, that's. Do you remember what I said to him when he
What'd you say?
mentioned that? I said, I feel as though that I felt that they were just one or two bad decisions from being on the other side where we are.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any issue with him. I told both those guys I had an issue with the officers. My lack of trust in them, and I just didn't feel comfortable being in the same room with those guys at all. And
But that even changed for you, right?
mostly except for that one officer that glared at me. I didn't like that, but
Yeah, but for the most part, it was a good experience.
yeah.
Yeah. What did you want to say about the stage?
Well, at the end, they allowed for an officer or anyone actually to express gratitude or towards someone, anyone at the event, and you could take them on stage, and for like 30 seconds you could thank them for whatever thing that they have given to or how they've made you feel. So that was pretty emotional. And also one person from my company actually was brought on stage to and thanked by one of the people who are incarcerated for spending time and actually caring. That was great. And that one person who was hugging that one woman, as far as her bringing someone on stage, and she was very emotional too. So
Yeah, and I think that what the correctional officers said initially when they came in and we were doing the like 24 hugs or 24 handshakes to get to know each other, for a lot of the correctional officers, they said that that was really uncomfortable for them because in their profession, they're not allowed to have physical contact with the people who are incarcerated. So for them to be giving handshakes and then like at the step to the line hugging, I think that was really like life-changing for a lot of people, both for the correctional officers and for the people who were incarcerated.
Yeah, remember that they said they actually could be written up.
Yeah.
For interaction, and then the other guys said, yeah, if you show that you're talking too much to officers, that you're friendly with them, you could have problems for yourself in jail.
With other people.
Yeah, it's other people, so you have to really watch yourself there too.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it was a really great event.
Yeah.
I would love to see more events like that, bringing together people who are incarcerated, people on the outside like us, and correctional officers, because I feel like that could transform the incarceration and like prison industrial complex. Like, I think that the people who are incarcerated need to have more opportunities to really grow personally. I think that was amazing. So I think that was about everything.
Well, I had a question for you. How did you feel when they had to line up and leave?
Well, what I was telling you is that we got on the bus and left and went back to our lives. Like, we flew back to California. We went back to like our day-to-day work, writing, kids. But I was thinking about how they're just going back to like a literal like cell or cage, and that for some of them, they're going to be in there for years or decades. And that just really, like, on a certain level, like, made me feel really sad that's their reality.
It's interesting because you pointed out to me when I was talking with the one person about, hey, continuing with this, transition of growth for himself, and that maybe I see him again at another event, that you had to tell me, hey, he needs to get in line. You're going to get him in trouble. And for a while, I forgot.
That he was incarcerated?
I was just talking to another guy, we were just talking, and it seemed like it was a relaxed environment, which it was, that he still had to follow directions, but I was taking it so, hey, we were talking until he did not want to speak anymore. So that, and then they were having so much fun at the end.
The lip sync battle.
Yeah, that was like a mix of.
Talk about that a little bit.
So it was a lip sync battle with full dance moves. It was one group was the officers battling the people who are incarcerated, and then the coaches and mentors had their own group, and they also sang and danced. It was like a mix of Pitch Perfect and You Got Served all in one. So that was
And
pretty interesting.
the people who were incarcerated all were dancing to Soldier Boy, right?
So that's why they won, because they were in unison.
That was amazing.
Actually, I wanted to get with them. That was better. They were a better group. But then I thought it was, you could tell the officers were actually relaxed and they were hugging the guys afterwards, because you had officers who the day before, one of the gentlemen who I met the day before, he was not very approachable when I first met him. And we ended up talking for like 20 minutes just about, hey, how do you conduct yourself in interviews and networking sessions, things of that nature. He drove in, even though he wasn't a part of that day, came in, had an outfit, and was breakdancing. So that was great to see. And then the coaches were, they were battling too. So that was a lot of fun. See everyone relax and just people are people. So from that part, it makes sure that I definitely want to do something like that again.
Yeah.
And be involved in some sort of cause like that.
And I know that a lot of times people have an idea in their mind that everyone who's in prison is Black, and that's not correct. This group was very mixed, like a lot of white people, Black people, Latino people. I don't think I saw any Asian people, but maybe it was just because it was Arizona.
Yeah, because I think Arizona, it leaned more towards like probably Latino and white, and there were a few Black people. There weren't that many white people on either side, but it was mostly going to be, I think, just because it's closer to like the border and stuff like that.
Yeah, but yeah, one of the things I do talk about in my book is just that the U.S. is the world's largest incarcerator in history, that we incarcerate the most people, and that we also have the longest sentences for people. And we have, I believe it's like 80-something% of the world's population who are serving life without possibility of parole. So what we were kind of seeing firsthand is that a lot of these people are just humans who are who can transform their lives, who may have made poor decisions, and if they take accountability and are given a chance, that they're not going to make those same decisions again. And we hope that they all have a chance at freedom. Good.
Well, last thing is they were asked to not just better themselves, but they were implored to be positive role models for the other people at the prisons that they came from. There were people from multiple prisons there, so they were asked to be positive influences on others in their at their facility. So that was good to hear, and that they are thinking of others, not just themselves.
And I just wanted to say, I'm going to put in the links, the organization, the website, in case people are interested in checking it out. But if you also feel like a call to be in a friendship with someone who's incarcerated but may not be able to visit, I have been part of a collective called Abolition Apostles since 2021 that is it's going to be undergoing a name change, so it might not be Abolition Apostles by the time you see this. And if you see it in a few weeks or months. But if you are interested in becoming a pen pal, that's what they do. They match people who are incarcerated with people who are on the outside. And I think especially for people who are like Christian, who take Matthew 25 seriously about like feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and visiting the imprisoned, that it's a great way to kind of have that human connection with people who really are longing for that. And I know that there's like a 2-year right now wait list, because there's so many people who are incarcerated who are trying to connect with people, with pen pals on the outside. So I'm going to put that link in case anyone's interested. So I wanted to thank my husband for coming and for going on the trip with me. And in case you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe.